Everything started going wrong with Frank when he touched the new tooth which grew in his mouth. With his tongue, he was a perfect man. He had a record of a millions eons and had successfully completed billions of cycles on his Earth. He had been allocated to one of the most luxurious neighborhood in his country. He had a large estate with his own private swimming pool and a well-maintained garden. He still relished the face his neighbor made when he heard about his promotion. Well, what did he know? He was a million years too young to reach the seniority Frank held. The room under the stairs which Frank lived even had a bulb. Light was such a rare commodity for them. But when you are so old that your eyes can barely make out light from dark, when every last hair fell from your head, when every movement made you feel every bone in your body about to grind to dust, when you taste sawdust in everything you eat, when you can't remember the last time you had a tooth. A bulb wasn't exactly necessary for living, but a very good object to flex, and flexing always felt so good. Frank's room under the stairs made him a celebrity amongst his people. Well, where Frank comes from, everyone is millions of years old. They live under the stairs of their house, and every one of them have only one job. They need to keep a jar with a thing called Earth. They need to observe and monitor it. They need to tend to it, make organisms grow on it, and even weed organisms out when it threatened this Earth. Every one of them has their lives linked to this muddy orb in their jars. If your Earth is destroyed, well, let's not speak about that. Frank had been tweaking in his Earth with his tweezers, giving a job to some Tim. When he moved his tongue in his mouth, he felt the tooth growing at the far end of his mouth. Frank was so shocked. He accidentally dropped Tim in front of a moving bus. It was impossible. All his teeth fell out millions of years ago. Frank felt sick. He decided to call it a night and went to sleep. The next morning, well, safe to assume it was a morning, since you never know what time of day it is. From a room under the stairs, Frank woke up fresh. The tooth was still there, which annoyed him. He went to the corner of his room to eat his food. He picked up a spoonful of whatever he used to it and shoved it in his mouth. A severely bitter taste filled his mouth, which compelled him to spit the food out. What was happening to him? Frank quickly moved back to his table. He would focus on only his work now. In one night, while he WSNT watching, the world is at each other's throats. Frank had half a mind to wipe the world clean and end this cycle and begin a new one. But he decided against that. Instead, he painstakingly set back everything the humans had undone. He slowly fixed the ecosystem and occupied the humans elsewhere to keep them from tearing each other's throats apart. He was so engrossed in his work that he even paid attention to every random Joe who wanted their wishes fulfilled. After he was done, Frank felt a satisfaction creeping in him. He had not once thought about his problems. He stood up and walked to the rags on the floor in a corner of the room where he slept. Something was wrong. He walked upright. His legs didn't feel a thing. Frank couldn't handle the shock. His legs gave away and Frank fell down, losing his consciousness. When Frank woke up, his vision cleared. Literally, he could see objects outside of his Earth. His eyes did not blur everything out. He could clearly make out the room he was in. It was small and dark, with only a singular source of a light from the bulb hanging from the ceiling. Frank was terrified. He knew he was becoming young again. How was it possible? He felt very scared. All his accomplishments in life were about to be undone. The others would never respect a youngster, and his enemies would surely have tremendous fun belittling him. Frank couldn't think. He needed air. He needed to get out. Frank tumbled out of the room. He hadn't been outside for as long as he could remember. The outside needed some time to set in. Frank looked around. A very normal house with very normal stairs to the second floor. Frank moved around the house. He had forgotten how big it was. He saw the master bedroom, large enough to fit 5 rooms, in which he slept. As he moved about, a strange feeling started creeping into the back of Frank's mind. Why? What was the reason for his existence, or for people like him? Why did they need to be old? Why did they need to live under the stairs? And most importantly, why were their lives linked to those muddy orbs in their jars? Frank decided to go out. He needed to talk to upper management. He walks to the front porch and opens the door. He tried to remember what the outside looked like, but he could not remember anything. The door opened into the lawn. His lawn was surprisingly sunlit, but everything above his house was overed in unusual darkness. Frank jogs along the lawn, but he does not reach far. As he reaches the edge, he finds the land end, and beyond it lay nihility, a living darkness of non-existence. As he goes closer to the edge, he feels his feelings more prominently. Where was everyone else? Frank's memories became more hazy as he thought about it. His neighbors, were they even real? How did he know about these memories? Was everything he knew a lie? Frank walks back to his house dejected. He creeps back into his room under the stairs. He takes a look at the object in his jar. During the time he was distracted, the humans have succeeded in destroying each other. Only a handful lived. Why did they live? What was the point of their being there? Frank scoops up that disgusting object by his hand. He didn't know why, but he felt that the cursed object was the source of all his miseries. He rushes out of his house and tosses the object, the earth, into the Nihility. As the object disappeared into a sea of nothingness, a feeling of acute peace flows through Frank's mind. He walks back to his house. Everything in his enormously long life had been a lie. He had spent eons doing nothing for his own joy. As he walks through the door, his entire house lights up in colorful lights. A joyful melody plays through his brain and Frank closes the door. A few minutes later, Frank wakes up from his nap. He remembered why he was so happy. He has broken the world record for the highest time a species has existed on Earth. He was a celebrity, lauded by everyone. His Earth was his pride and joy. He walks to the jar on his desk. He remembered that his neighbor had invited him over, but Frank decides against going. He wouldn't set his eyes away from his Earth for such trivialities. Frank picks up his tweezers and he dives right back in where he left off before his nap.